Arkansas State Police are investigating this deadly crash on Interstate 55. 2 people died in this terrible crash, a TDOT worker and a semi-tractor trailer driver. Action News 5's Nick Kenny is live for us with the investigation. Nick?
Yeah, all 3 victims in this wreck are from opposite ends of the Mid-South. Their lives converged in one tragic moment about which investigators still seek answers. On I-55 near the Tennessee-Arkansas line, a privately contracted accident reconstruction team from Dallas, Texas, spent all morning collecting data and information on Monday afternoon's deadly crash.
The chance of this happening is like lightning striking, but it'll happen.
An 18-wheeler slammed into another broken-down 18-wheeler and a TDOT help truck. This grain is left over from that accident. It is part of the aftermath. There's a huge mound of it that's pushed off the right side of the interstate, even off of the emergency lane. The brunt of this accident actually happened on the left side of the interstate. Investigators are curious why. As in, why was the 18-wheeler broken down on the left and not pulled over to the right? And why was the TDOT help truck parked in front of the broken down truck and not behind, where emergency lights would be visible? Unanswered questions thus far as 2 different families mourn. On the Action News 5 Facebook page, a cousin of the truck driver posted, "Rest in peace, Tony Davis. You were a good man." Tennessee Department of Transportation help truck operator Robert Nowicki was a retired New York City police officer and 9/11 first responder who leaves behind a wife and 4 children. A friend posted, quote, "I am in shock." TDOT Commissioner John Schroer released a statement that reads, "We are deeply saddened by the loss of Robert Nowicki, and our hearts and prayers are with his family."
Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines in Danger on the Road, Robert Nowicki's story, to examine how James Gerards, founder of the Gerards law firm, is getting justice for Robert Nowicki's family, and to investigate this very serious problem of deadly trucking accidents responsible for thousands of deaths per year, and how the government, safety advocates, and dedicated trial lawyers like Jim are working together on national and state levels of government to reduce this serious problem. The Insider Exclusive analyzed 5 years of federal crash data. We added up the fatalities, county by county, road by road, during that period. And we found that between 3,500 and 5,000 people are killed in truck crashes on our nation's highways every year. Although that's the equivalent of a commercial airplane crash every single week, there is a general lack of awareness on the part of the motoring public about this problem. Estimates suggest that fatigue is a major factor in up to 30% of fatal crashes and 15% of serious injury crashes. Fatigue also contributes to approximately 25% of insurance losses in the heavy vehicle industry. Driver fatigue is particularly dangerous because one of the symptoms is a decreased ability to judge one's own level of tiredness. Research has shown that not sleeping for more than 17 hours has an effect on driving ability, the equivalent of a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05. Not sleeping for 24 hours has the same effect of having a blood alcohol content of 0.10, double the legal limit. In the best of conditions, tractor trailers are dangerous vehicles simply due to their size and weight. The average semi can carry more than 40,000 pounds of cargo, let alone the mass of the truck, fuel, and trailer. The average passenger vehicle, on the other hand, weighs only 4,000 pounds, a deadly match in any collision. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is in charge of regulating the commercial trucking industry, including how many hours truck drivers are permitted to operate their vehicles within any given day or week. The Code of Federal Regulations, 49 CFR 392, contains mandatory rules regarding fatigue and impairment. Under present federal hours of service regulations, commercial truck drivers are required to follow the 11-hour 60/70 rules. On the 11-hour rule, truck drivers may not drive more than 11 consecutive hours within a 14-hour period, followed by 10 hours off duty. The 60/70 rule, truck drivers may spend no more than a total of 60 hours on duty within any 7-day period, or 70 hours on duty within any 8-day period. A new 7 or 8-day period does not begin until the truck driver has spent at least 34 hours off duty. In this Insider Exclusive investigative TV special, the Gerards law firm has been for years reaching out to some of the more responsible motor carriers to identify issues on which they can work together. Jim has become not only an extraordinary advocate for safety on our highways, but has also become one of the most sought-after trial lawyers in catastrophic crashes involving trucks. Jim dedicates his time and energy to reducing the number of deaths and injuries caused by truck-related crashes and working on issues that are important to improve truck safety, like this trucking safety crisis is a direct result of government deregulation in 1980 and a super competitive industry with many companies willing to cut corners. Fierce competition with shippers having unrealistic demands. Responsible trucking companies also want improvements in safety. The government's mistaken rationale for deregulation was that fewer and simpler regulations would lead to a raised level of competitiveness, therefore higher productivity, more efficiency, and lower prices overall. In every truck crash case that the Gerards law firm represents, his firm attempts to require the trucking company to do more than just pay money. They attempt to identify the issue that caused a particular crash in question and require the company take steps to improve that aspect of safety within the company. The result of years of pushing for improved safety in the trucking industry and joining together with some of the best trial lawyers in the country and representing truck crash victims across America is that the Gerards law firm provides compassionate representation for truck crash victims and achieves maximum recovery while also working for maximum reduction of similar crashes in the future. Jim Gerards has earned the highest respect from citizens and lawyers alike as one of the best trial lawyers in Dallas, in Texas, and across America. His amazing courtroom skills and success rate continue to provide his clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. He makes sure juries understand how injuries can truly devastate a person's personal and professional life. Remember, he won't be outworked, and he will not rest until justice is done for his clients. His success in the courtroom speaks for itself. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Dallas, Texas. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jim Gerards to the show. Welcome to the show, Jim.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Today we're here, we're discussing a case that you tried against a couple of trucking companies, and it's a trucking crash case. Your client's name was Bob Nowicki, and his wife is now his widow, Debbie Nowicki. Can you tell us a little bit about Bob?
Well, Bob was a fascinating fella. He was a New York City police officer through retirement. He was a first responder to the 9/11 attacks at the World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. And then years later, he retired, moved to Tennessee with his family, and found that he wanted to spend some time doing some work, and so started working as a roadside assistance worker for the Tennessee HELP program.
And these are the people that drive up and down the freeway and help motorists when they're stranded or whatever, correct?
In the state of Tennessee, the HELP program with the roadside assistance workers is actually a lot more than in a lot of other states where you might see a pickup truck with some flashing lights helping a motorist who's stranded. In Tennessee, they have special training and have special trucks, and they are their primary role is to keep the highways free of dangerous vehicles that are stranded, and especially heavy trucks, because Western Tennessee is a major crossroads for the trucking industry.
Okay, what happened in this case?
Well, in this case, Bob Nowicki was on his way to assist a stranded motorist, and when he came across an 18-wheeler that was stalled in the fast lane of the highway that was approaching Memphis from the west, he stopped to see if he could assist that trucker. And while he was trying to help get the engine restarted, another trucker was coming down the road at a high rate of speed, and that trucker rear-ended them at full highway speed in the left lane.
And he was killed upon impact, right?
Right. Mr. Nowicki unfortunately died in that collision.
Also, the trucker that hit the other truck, that driver was killed, wasn't it?
Right. He died as well.
There was one person that survived because he saw it coming and he jumped or something, correct? The other truck driver.
The other truck driver survived because he was sitting in the cab of the first truck.
Yeah.
And when the collision happened, he was actually thrown out of the truck and over the retaining wall, out of the way of the vehicles.
What were some of the legal strategies that you utilized to try and prove whose fault it was and win for your client?
Well, this case was difficult in a lot of ways, especially because the driver who impacted the first truck was deceased, and we couldn't ask him what happened or what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so we had to reconstruct his activities for the last 48 hours through computer data, systems on the truck, GPS data, shipping receipts, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and one of the things everyone always looks for is fatigued drivers, correct?
Right.
And that's a big problem in the trucking industry. This is one of the reasons why we're doing this show, is because some drivers have dual sets of books, don't they?
They do. One of the big problems in the trucking industry that continues and is growing is the problem of fatigued truckers.
Yeah.
Now, if you combine that with the fact that our population is becoming more and more overweight, and particularly truck drivers, you have health issues that come into play. And so we saw a number of layers in this particular truck driver. Driver fatigue, he was over hours, but not only that, he had a condition called sleep apnea, which makes you a lot more tired because you don't get high quality sleep. And sleep apnea is one of the biggest safety issues in trucking today.
Really?
It is.
So what happened in this case? You sued the two trucking companies, correct?
We did.
And what happened as a result of this?
Well, we sued the first trucking company because it turned out that that trucker was driving a very dangerous truck. And it wasn't a matter of if he was going to break down. It was just a matter of when and where.
Okay.
And when he, it turns out that he was so low on fuel that he wasn't going to be able to make it to his destination, and that violated some federal motor carrier regulations.
Now, it's interesting how you proved this. We are actually showing on the screen you had a fuel sloshing animation video done, correct?
Yes, we did.
Well, you went out and hired an expert. Explain what that is.
Well, we had to show how it is that a trucker with 11 gallons in his fuel tank still ran out of fuel. And so we hired And so we went to some physics and computer specialists who are specialists in fuel sloshing technology, and they do these analyses for the oil and gas industry and tank manufacturers and that sort of thing. So this was an industry-specific niche, and we found a specialist who was willing to put together, using computer data, what the fuel sloshing inside the tank would have looked like during the final moments of that path's travel. And what we found was that the fuel sloshed back and forth, exposing the fuel intake to air. And heavy diesel engines do not work very well when they start to suck air.
Right. All of these cases, like this one, you had to backtrack and find out what truck driver number 2, the one that smashed into the truck driver number 1, what he was doing. He was deceased. You had to recreate all of that and get it was difficult to get because the trucking company wasn't giving that information up right away, were they?
That's right.
The second, the first truck, the one that Bob had stopped to help.
Right.
The fact that they ran out of fuel was a traffic safety violation, wasn't it?
It was.
It was breaking the law.
It was. A truck driver must not operate his vehicle unless he can make it to his intended destination.
Yeah. Now,
safely.
How does that play a part in the next hurdle that you had in terms of the professional rescuer doctrine, which basically allowed trucking company number 1, the one that ran out of fuel, to be dismissed out of the case? How does that relate to that? How important is that?
Well, the insurance company relied on a theory called the professional rescuer doctrine, or the fireman's doctrine.
Yes.
Which is an outdated rule that basically says a professional rescuer like a fireman or a policeman can't sue the person he's rescuing for negligence in causing the rescue. Now, we felt very strongly that this did not apply to a roadside assistance worker, but the trial judge disagreed. And we felt strongly enough about that we are going to challenge that law in Arkansas, and we expect it to be reversed.
The end result of this case so far, you got a verdict for?
Well, we were able to resolve the case favorably against the trucking company that caused the collision.
For, I think, $1.4 million, right?
Correct. And
Okay.
then the remaining case that we're challenging for this important public safety reason is against the trucking company for the truck that stalled for running out of fuel to begin with. And
Yeah.
so we're confident that we'll be back to resolve that one in front of a jury in the future.
Today we have with us Bob's widow, Debbie,
Yes.
and we're going to bring her on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Debbie Nowicki to the show. Welcome to the show, Debbie.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Take us back to that day and that awful time when you first learned what happened to your husband.
It was midday. I had been working at the time, and I had received many phone calls on my phone. I was very busy. I was running a trucking company. I was a safety manager and dispatcher for a trucking company, and I was receiving phone calls from a number I didn't recognize, and on my personal phone, and I realized something was wrong. I don't normally get phone calls on my personal phone, and I called the number back, and they told me that my husband had been in a terrible accident, and that he had serious injuries, and that I needed to go to the Department of Transportation headquarters in Memphis. Being a realist, I immediately recognized I was not going to the hospital. And if my husband had serious injuries, I would be going there.
Mm-hmm.
So they did not tell me on the phone, and I was driven to Memphis, where they informed me at the headquarters over there that he had in fact been killed. It was already common knowledge pretty much to everyone that knew me, because it was on the news, and it was a large, tragic accident that affected traffic and made the news.
You have 4 children with
Yes.
Bob, right?
Yes.
You were married how long?
16, 17 years. We were together 18, 19 years.
And Bob was retired from the New York Police Department, right?
He served 20 years as prior to the police department, he was a Marine, but very proud Marine, and he served 20 years in the New York City Police Department. Seen a lot of good and bad from people. Always still had a drive to want to help, and was there, responding to 9/11, and we went through all of that tragedy. And when he retired, it was our turn. That retirement was the light at the end of the tunnel, and we were going to move south and have a pleasant way of life and fish a little and raise kids and raise babies in an environment that they could run around and not worry. So it was a very good thing.
Yeah. What have you learned from this case in terms of truck safety and trucks on the road and what needs to be done, et cetera? What do you have to say to America?
I was able to look at it in 2 different perspectives. As a widow and parent of children that lost their dad, and also an insider to the industry, and well aware of requirements and laws and how these companies need to be run, and how drivers need to raise the bar in professionalism, and how they need to conduct themselves on the roadways, and all of that being very clear to me prior to this tragedy ever happening, and the standards that I ran my company, and the standards I held my drivers to, and my shop and mechanics and equipment. It brought to my attention a severe lack of accountability, not only from companies, but from Department of Transportation inspectors sitting in air-conditioned buildings on the sides of the roads and not getting out there and putting their hands on trucks that have been on the road 10 years and never once had an inspection done. Yeah. There's a problem there that it can be avoided. It was avoided here. So that's disturbing to me.
Well, I want to thank you for being on the show. You send a very important message to America for everyone to pay attention to, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for taking your time.
Every year, Jim, it's estimated, I think by statistics, that roughly 5,000 people die on our highways due to big trucking accidents. Everyone knows, all of us consumers know that trucking companies could implement more safe regulations which would promote safety. And it's such a hard-fought battle to get these implemented. I like to call this the politics of safety. Why is it so difficult to get trucking companies to adopt regulations and procedures which prevent more of these accidents?
Well, the politics of safety is something that is struggled with in Washington every day. And what we see is from the trucking industry is they exert a lot of pressure to keep, on the politicians to keep regulations as low as possible, because that affects their bottom line, and really not very much, unfortunately. Yeah. But when you have an MBA mentality at the top of these large trucking companies and they're trying to shave pennies off of each shipment, then we see the pressures that are placed on the truck drivers themselves, for example, result in people taking shortcuts. Yeah. And unfortunately, when that happens, people die. We certainly hope through this case, through this show, that more and more people are aware of the changes that need to be made and step up and voice concern to make those changes happen. I want to thank you very much for being on the program. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.